Hey, everybody. Welcome to DCARI's 17th virtual fire investigative training session. Today, we're going to talk with Barry Grimm, who is the immediate past president of the IAAI, as well as Joe Herzberg, who is the co-chair for the ITC. Unfortunately, ITC was canceled this year. And Joe and Barry have agreed to come on and teach us about vehicle fires. So Joe does this full time, and we're really looking forward to this training session. Just to let you know, this is the 17th session. We are sponsored by the Dane County Fire Chiefs Association, 28-member departments that allow us to bring these fire investigative sessions to you. We will be taking off June, July, and August, so this may be the last one you see, probably until maybe September. So thanks for joining us, and guys, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Bill. We appreciate it. And everybody, welcome to our presentation. This is my first webinar. And as Bill said, I'm an ITC co-chair, and unfortunately it got canceled this year due to the pandemic again. But we're looking forward to Jacksonville. Hopefully another year will get by and we'll get Jacksonville up and running for you. But we hope you enjoy our presentation. It's a basic approach to vehicle investigations. It's going to be an overview of a 3-day course that myself and Barry teach around the country. That course includes hands-on live fire investigations on recently burned vehicles. So we do that course as well. So we're going to start with a little basics, some information for you, and our information will be at the end. If you need anything, reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to help you out. So to first off, who thinks car fires are easy anymore? Everybody wants to get into vehicle investigations, but not many people are getting into car fires. This is a picture from the Florida 3,500 car fires that burned in Florida a couple months back. These were all rental vehicles at an off-site location that were being transported due to the lack of rental from the pandemic. So a couple more videos will show you about this, but this was one of the largest vehicle fires I've ever witnessed. And fortunately, one of our friends did the investigation on it. So we're going to make this work for you, I think. So you can see this is a picture from the Charlotte Sheriff's Department. When's the last time you saw air drops done for car fires? Again, this went over several days and they did several air drops for multiple days on that one. And this ended up to be the scene at the end. You'll see the green arrow someplace right in the middle here, and that's your center area. That's what they believe was the area of origin on this fire. But you can see the large amount of burned out vehicles. Over 3,500 was the total number at the end. Figure at $30,000 a vehicle times 3,500, what's our loss? So vehicles are becoming a large issue for the insurance company. They want to make some money back. They want a subrogation. So more and more people are getting into it, and we're finding more vehicle fires out there. So just the basic facts. As of 2018, we were provided these facts. Approximately 1 in every 8 vehicle fires responded to by the fire department across the nation is a vehicle fire. 38% are unintentional acts. 83% of those are highway vehicles occurred in passenger vehicles. As you can see, 62% of them are highway vehicle fires. 36 are include fatal. So these numbers are going up through the years, even with the high quality of cars that we're making these days and the better production facilities. The numbers are going higher and higher. You can see the insulation and wiring issues are at 29%. 60% of all fatality vehicles were a result of a collision. So we had an estimate of 212,500 vehicle fires in 2018 as these stats. The numbers have increased. We're waiting for the newest reports to come out. 560 civilian deaths, 1,500 civilian injuries, and 1.9 billion in loss. So that's why the insurance companies are pushing for more and more investigations, more and more causes for the point of subrogation.
We think possibly now with these stats coming closer and closer to being 4 years old now, maybe 1 in every 5 fires involves a vehicle. So some larger cities, we understand, for a whole bunch of reasons, don't really do car fires unless, of course, they involve a fatality where there's a body inside the car, maybe a crime concealment, could be a myriad of other things, but there are a lot of reasons that people don't. We encourage public sector guys who do car fires, and they are a daunting experience. If they are invited or can get to an exam that's being run by private sector people, you're definitely going to learn something, because they get into, as Joey will get into and we'll both get into, a reason for a lot of your cars are certainly recalls, and you have to be able to discover them, especially if they end up in being involving in an injury. So even though Chapter 20 has gone away for classification of cause, your municipalities probably encourage you and want you to put some type of classification of cause on fires. So you can see these billions of dollar numbers are kind of like taxes. They are not going to go down. They are going to stay on the uprise. And we know the expenses involved with arson. Nothing is more expensive than war. So there's some big money, and automobiles and things with wheels and things that move through the night are a great riser in that number. So we have to keep that in mind. And a lot of these cases are just like structures. The dynamics we'll talk about. You can have, we're convinced from burning so many cars that the travel is in a much smaller space, but we're getting temperatures in that 1130 to 2000 degree range when we instrument some of these vehicles. So we know that they flash. We have seen them go to flash. Windows come breaking out, just like you have. Doors are creaking open. Windshields start to dance around a little bit, and some air gaps happen. And so ventilation is a monster in structures. Ventilation is also a monster in vehicles. And in a high percentage of the time, probably, thank goodness, the vehicle part, you're dealing with an outside event. So now you have weather as a condition. So you know, fuel and ventilation limited become a little bit mixed up in that order outside.
So part of a vehicle investigation, like your structures and everything else, it's a complete and thorough investigation of all the systems need to be documented. And what do I mean by a complete and thorough investigation? Every system needs to be documented on the vehicle. Every area needs to be looked at. You can't eliminate spots without looking at them. So you need to look through the engine compartment. Fuse blocks are being stored there now, many as well as other places, which we'll talk about. The batteries, no longer just in the engine compartment, and all the fluids. Consider what's in the engine compartment as fluids: windshield washer, antifreeze, brake fluids, and transmission, power steering. Those all have to be looked at and eliminated as possible cause or contributing factor to your fires. So that's one area. You need to look in the trunks and cargo areas. Again, batteries and fuse blocks are being pushed into those areas now just for space limited. So that's not going to be uncommon anymore. Passenger compartment, under seats, glove boxes, storage box spaces in the center dashboard and the consoles. All those spaces need to be looked at just to see what's going on. In the center consoles, you're finding more and more power ports that people are charging items, e-cigarettes, computers, phones. So all those need to be looked at and make sure there's nothing in there for the electrical aspect.
So here, most of your vents are in the passenger compartment because it's surrounded by doors in common ordinary vehicles that you and I look at every day. So, but also most of your fuel is there, and the seats are filled with polyurethane foam. So there's a lot of energy being released right in those compartments. So it's a good idea for you to think about compartments as you approach your vehicle, kind of walking up to it for the first time, to say, let me get a look at this. And we'll talk about maybe perhaps how you should go about photographing that vehicle.
So again, the big area that I hear a lot of on the private side and the public side is more on the public side. They can't see the undercarriage. They can't get under the vehicle to do an examination or at least photograph it. I would tell you several ways. One is I use a skateboard. I hook my iPad onto it with a rope, and I slide it under as best I can on video mode so I can take at least a video of the car as possible at the scene. If you can get a tow truck up there, get it up on the tow truck, have it half on the tow truck, half off. Do not crawl under the vehicle at that point. Just take your point and shoot or your iPad with a stick on it and take a couple pictures under there and review them. If you see something under that doesn't look right to you or needs to be examined further, then the vehicle needs to go to a facility that has an inspection rack or a storage system that gets it up off the road for you, and you can look at it safely. But at no means do I recommend looking under the car on the side of a road using the jack from the vehicle or any kind of jack stands. The vehicle should be up on a rack or up on a storage system that's secured. So if you get under there and wiggle around or start moving something, it doesn't collapse on you. You got to remember safety on this. But under the undercarriage, you need to look at the engine, the transmission housing, the exhaust system, fuel systems, and the electrical systems all run under the underhousing of these vehicles. What could you miss? Simple things like these you can miss. On the top left is a transmission. That's surely not an inspection hole. That's somebody that took a vehicle from a car rental, decided to go 4x4 in with it, and broke the transfer case. On the far right, that's what we call driftwood in New Jersey. When we get floods, the wood comes off the ocean, off the bays, and it just sits in the streets. And this traveled up into a drive shaft of a Mercedes-Benz, and you can see the friction wear on it. And we had a small friction fire under this car. And as you can see on the bottom, it's electrical. We have an overheating wire. But if you're not under the vehicle, you can't see this. And I know it's difficult. I've been in your shoes, but there's got to be a way that you can set this up that you can look at these vehicles. If you're looking at these for a possible criminal or other cause. So I'd recommend it highly.
921 suggests that you have a photograph of the underside. So if you go to a deposition or you're in a trial, you may get asked about why do you not have a photo of the underside of the vehicle. So do your best, but like Joey says, it's got to be safe. So in the impound yard, if you know the guy that's got the forks and he can lift it for you and it's safe, you can get that shot, because they're going to lean that way to say perhaps something happened under the vehicle and now we can't make a full scientific method decision that you were able to cancel out or limit what happened underneath the vehicle. So running that skateboard under there, you need good equipment. We understand that. Not your phone taped to the skateboard. You want to try and get some decent pictures. So it's kind of important that you get under there somehow.
So again, the investigator, you need to know your role in this investigation. What are you there for? Are you on the public or private sector? Who do you represent? The owner, the manufacturer, a service center? Are you there for the insurance carrier? No matter who you represent, the facts have to be the facts. You can't push the investigation to your client or in another direction. Remember, it's all data. Remember step 3, the scientific method. This is what we're using, 921, that scientific method to get through the investigation. You need to be able to say to yourself, this is not a good fire. This is not good for my client, but the facts are the facts. I have to put them in a report so everybody understands exactly what happened, and I'm not slanting the report left or right. Stay straight in the line. You'll never have a problem. You start drifting left or right on that line, and now all of a sudden people start questioning your morals and your abilities.
On either side of the fence, you don't have the luxury of being able to certainly choose your victims. So a car that's for a wife and a husband and a family of 5 children, that's an older car, and somebody vandalizes it or sets it on fire. To them, that's the same value of a guy who loses his very expensive car, but can go to the garage and just get in another one. So you can't choose your victims, but you have to say at the end of the day, you know what, I did a pretty good job. It was difficult. I didn't understand, but you have to find your way to be able to satisfy the side of the fence that you're on.
And I know I'll get emails about it, so I'll just tell you this picture was for a fatality, 3 people involved. They hit a Lowe's delivery truck with 80,000 pounds of cement and a forklift on it. They drifted across the load and hit it head on. Car burst into flames, and there was 3 fatalities. So what's our investigation steps? they're not much different than a structure fire. You need to do your witnesses. You need to talk to the owner, the operator, and get some witness statements. With a vehicle, you need to do some research. I'll give you some steps on how to do some research on it. You need to do a scene examination. Your scene on the private side may be a yard, Copart, IAAI. It may be one of those yards that the vehicle's been there for 2 or 3 weeks since you got the assignment. On the public side, you should be able to look at that scene examination. This is where the public and private side need to work together, because as a private investigator, I don't have the luxury of jumping on to the New Jersey Turnpike or Route 95 and taking pictures of this vehicle seen 3 weeks ago. But on the public side, you may have seen documentation from me. You may have a camera, you may have some pictures that you took with your department camera that I can get from you. So that's where we work together well. You need to complete a vehicle inspection. Okay, we talked about a thorough investigation of it. Is there any evidence that needs to be collected? You need to look at that. Using 921, you need to come up with all the data, come up with a hypothesis, select it, do a test on it, then prepare your report. I'm big on reports. I like everything that goes in that report that I put in my notes, and I technically review it, and then I send it out for both a technical review and an administrative review. We all know everybody has their own way of spelling words, but you really want all that technical service done before you do the final draft and submit it, because that may end up in a courtroom or legal proceedings, and there's nothing worse than having some typos in there and trying to re-explain why you said this instead of that. So that's what I would tell you for reports.
So no different than a structure, we still have, and you'll hear us say this for the entire presentation, we didn't create a different monster. There are millions of cars out there, millions of things with wheels on them. And as a result of them being on fire, you and I have movement through fire dynamics, what fire can do and what it can't do, or it probably wasn't able to do, changing through a bulkhead or a firewall. Also, witness statements, and as Joey alluded to, the public sector has a big shot at this, and sometimes we don't take advantage of all the people that we could talk to, just like we don't take advantage of going to the scene. We get it the next day or the next morning, and we don't take a chance to go out on the interstate or out to an old logging road to see actually where the car suffered the calamity there, where it was set on fire or where it was burnt. And we're losing evidence and losing the scene, because the record driver and the one patrolman that were out there, they don't much care about that. So some of the things that apply in 921, dynamics, witness statements, and patterns are still our roadmaps, just as if we were in a structure.
So we need to interview the owner of the vehicle. We need some basic information, his name, address, phone number, stuff like that. But the other stuff we need to do, and we need to do it in a non-combative, we need to be nice about it. Financial status. Is there a lien holder on the car? Is it leased? Do you own it? Monthly payments. People get a little crazy when you start asking about their finances. You know, they're starting to think you're maybe pushing the investigation one way or another. So you want to be nice about it. You want to ask some simple questions. And if you feel you're pushing too hard, take a step back. Look at the insurance company. Find out who the private person is. The insurance company will give you all that information. We have no problem turning over our files. All we have to do is play nice, and we can work together on a lot of these information you need. Was the vehicle parked for an extended period of time? Okay, that's a big one. Was it been parked for 2 or 3 weeks? You know, were they a snowbird? We have a lot of people in New Jersey that go to Florida and leave their cars, 3 or 4 months unattended in the woods around their house. So we need to know about that. Who had the keys to the vehicle? Were there more than one set of keys? Okay. In today's age, you have key fobs, you have Bluetooth keys. There's a lot of different style of keys for starting the vehicles. We really need to try to make sure we get all those keys and document all the keys. And we'll talk a little bit about that further on in the day. Who routinely drives the car? You know, is it mom, 50 years old, drives it back and forth to the grocery store, picks up the kids at the store? Or is it the 17-year-old kid that's hot rodding the car and beating on it? That makes a difference in the car. Who's driven it recently? Is it dad's Ferrari that he hasn't let the kid drive, and all of a sudden he got permission to take it to prom, and did Mach 5 in it? Questions need to be answered like that. And I always like to ask, was there any photographs of the vehicle prior to the event? Everybody likes their vehicle, takes pictures of it, and you usually can get it on the phone or any pictures you may have. Can you send it to me? Let's see what kind of condition the car was prior to the event. Was it a total junk box first? And they're trying to scam the insurance company. Was it a high quality vehicle that they kept show quality? Those are good things to have in your file.
So if there's no insurance, you won't run into insurance people unless, of course, there's insurance on the structure and the car was in the garage. But if the car is in the street, it certainly doesn't mean because there's no insurance, there is no crime. So you need to know your statute frontward and backward. All the fire marshals, you need to be traipsing around inside the law in case you can't get the cops to be interested and help you out with it. But it doesn't mean that you don't have criminal mischief, that you don't have, an arson, depending on the value of the car that may have not been insured at the time of the fire. So you got to pay attention to what's going on around you.
So what are our most common reasons these days for vehicle fires? Parts, defects, malfunctions. The average car today has 33,000 plus parts on it. Everybody has a bad day at work. You're trying to produce 3 or 4 of these cars a minute in some of these factories, trying to get them out there. You could have a bad day. You can have a bad part. The supply chain didn't go well that week. Where are the parts coming from? So those are all part of it. Electrical failures. Most vehicles today, 3 miles of wire in it. Under the standard, you're not supposed to have 2 the same color. It doesn't mean you won't have 6 white wires in there. One may be white with a blue dot, one may be white with a green dot. But when we see them, what usually color are they? Black, charred. So that's important. Involved in a crash, in our down financial economy right now, people get in accidents and they don't fix their vehicle. They have a choice. Do I fix the vehicle or do I pay my rent and my electric? So they had to make choices during this financial problems we were having in the country. So was the vehicle involved in a crash recently? There's another perfect thing for the private side to ask for the insurance company or go through your police department and see if they can pull up his record and see if he's been involved in any crashes. The fuel systems. Okay, the old days, they were made out of aluminum. Mostly today, they're plastic, including the fuel tanks. Over time, they break down, they get hot, they get cold, they keep going back and forth, and they eventually could crack and fail. There's no more nuts and bolts on a fuel system. Most of them are pushed together with a little clip that's holding these intact. You have high pressures on them now, not properly maintained. You could have a failure in it. And the big one I'm finding is lack of proper maintenance. Think about yourself. How often do you take your vehicle to the dealership at $85 to $105 an hour? Is that something you really do? Or do you take it to the local Jiffy Lube and have a quick oil change on it for $29.95 or when the coupon comes out? So those are questions you need to ask yourself and look at the maintenance records on it. You should be able to get the maintenance records from several sites, which I'll give you shortly. But look at those sites, look at Carfax, look at your local dealerships and go over there and ask them. Give them the VIN number and see what they say. So here, I'm going to show you one. It's a case I did a couple of years back. It's a 2018 Buick Enclave. The vehicle caught fire in the owner's driveway approximately 30 minutes after getting its first oil change at the dealership. The car had less than 3,000 miles on it. It was going for its first oil change. Think about some of the questions you'd like to ask the occupant. Was this for a routine service? Was there any other service performed on the vehicle at the time? Stuff like that you need to know. Was it just there for the oil change? That kind of stuff will help you. But here's some of the questions you'd like to ask. Here's the front of the vehicle. And as I said, what type of service was completed? Was it just a routine oil change? Was it there for something else? Warranty work, dashboard light, check engine light, anything like that? Looking at the front picture, we can clearly see it was an engine compartment fire. What's the engine hood made out of? In this case, it was composite plastic. Okay, so we easily consumed. You can see the hinges left on the sides, the front latch symbol still there. Okay, and you can see the fire entered through the passenger side, driver's side windshield going up across the hood. Okay, the name of the service provider would be a great information, or the receipt. A lot of times those receipts are left in the glove box or center console. If you have a vehicle fire, they may not be available. You'd like to get all that information, a copy of the credit card, or if you paid for the service. This way you have proof that you can go to that dealership and get the transaction and the service records. Really important to have that. Copy of any invoice or service records. Was the car there for anything else in the previous 30 days? Okay, if it was, what was it there for? Okay, Simple questions. Was there any dashboard lights on? Okay. Have you had any issues with the car in 30 days? If so, what were they? Do we have receipts for them? Okay, we want to go back that far. Here's a picture of the interior. You can see the driver's side. A lot of thermal damage from the heat coming through the front windshield failing. Okay, the fire did not originate in this area just by the pictures. We have thermal damage high across there. The center dashboard's still intact. The gauges are still intact. It's just everything that got radiant heat from the windshield. We want to take a picture as we talked about fluids. Okay, the driver's side of the car, the brake fluid reservoir. We want to take a picture of that. Okay, we can see the reservoir is missing. We need to rule out that was a possible cause or contributing factor in the event. A couple simple pictures will do that for you. Top of the engine looking down. Okay, we can see the wiring harness is still intact, but all the protective casing has been melted or burned off, relating to thermal heat. The top of the valve cover is still there. It's plastic and composite. Okay, does that give you any clue as to how high the temperature heat was back there? Okay, it's not melted, but look at the damage to the frame in front of it. Looking at the front of the vehicle, there's the alternator to the left. Okay, you have the exhaust manifold off to the right. You can see the shield on it, high heat on that, clean burned. Right below that is the oil filter. You should start noticing some stuff on that oil filter.
And there's a lot of things you have to contend with here, as you can see in every photo. And as you saw, I don't know if you noticed in one of the very early ones, there's snow laying between the vehicles out there in this impound yard. So you have one of the, one form of oxidation that rapidly becomes present, especially in car fires, which is rust. So you see the discoloration, and after a while, you start to really understand the difference there in the rusting as opposed to patterns that formed on some of your other things.
So here, now we're back to that oil filter. This was just recently changed. Would be expecting to see any kind of seepage like this. Okay, why is that seepage of a brand new oil filter there on the side upper portion? Questions have to be answered. Once we take that oil filter off and start looking at it, you'll see the surface cracks all around that gasket, which is very alarming. What's causing those gaskets to crack? What's causing that foam to cause around that? Okay, so once we end up taking that off, we ended up deciding to drain the filter, drain the oil, and come up with a volume of oil. And as you can see, that's more than 5 quarts. So the downside to this was the vehicle was brought in at approximately 11:38 in the morning. By 11:45, she was on the road again. That's a fast 30-minute oil change. And one guy thought the other guy did the service. One guy thought the other guy did the filter. Nobody did anything. They just added 5 fresh quarts and sent her down our road. The pressure built up in the vehicle, and the weakest point of that was the filter gasket, which is where it broke out of. So how far do you go on your investigation? It depends on the information you have. When you start looking at recent service work that was done, you should backtrack all that service work. If they had just had an oil change, you need to start looking at the oil. You need to start looking at the filter. Was the plug put in tight? Was the cap left off? You need to start inspecting all that, because that was recent work that could be causing or contributing to your event.
So you don't want to cause any spoliation if you're on the public side. You're not probably taking off oil filters, although you may get leads going in that direction. It would not bother you to share those leads with the insurance person who is coming, rather than removing the oil filter, letting the rest of the oil drain out. Could have something to do of shredded metals that may be in the oil, could be a different type of case. So you also have to be certainly aware of spoliation, the same as you would be in a structure.
So I like telling everybody on the public side, there's really no sense, unless there's a criminal case for you to build, taking too much off of this vehicle. If you have questions, reach out to the private guy that's coming behind you. It's a lot easier for us to justify sending out samples of oil, fluids, or evidence that we collect from inside of the vehicle and provide you those with those information and those report findings. Then going to your chief and say, hey, I want to send out this oil filter. It's going to cost $500 for what ends. So if you can get with the private guys, their pockets are a little bit deeper, and it's easier for us to justify sending out information and get stuff like that to you. But talking about testing and samples and evidence collection, you should know in your department who's doing that for you, who's collecting your evidence. Is it your fire department? Is it you? Do you have to call crime lab, local state police? It's nice to know these people prior to the event. You're not going to get a good rapport with anybody calling them Christmas Eve, on a snow night and telling them they need to come out and collect evidence from you. It's always nice to know what their protocols are, who comes out, when will they come out, what will they come out for, versus doing a cold call on somebody. So these are stuff you should do prior to your investigation. Have copies of all this stuff for yourself, and make friends with these people. Introduce yourself. So if you call them, it's not a cold call in the middle of a night. And that kind of stuff is what you're looking for. But at the very least, you should be looking at fluids on the vehicle. The very least, you should be checking all the fluids and documenting them with a photograph, and they should be documented in your report. The engine oil needs to be looked at, the transmission, if accessible, brake fluid, power steering fluid, windshield washer fluids. All that stuff needs to be looked at and documented, both with a photograph and in your report. The newer vehicles, I can tell you, are starting to have less and less accessibility to a dipstick for the engine oil and the transmission fluid. Most of them are now going all electronic, and they're not allowing a dipstick on either fluid. So that's going to cause a little problem for us. Going back to, if you believe it's a service issue, you may have to drain the fluid out and calculate how much is in there after you get the water out, and then send it out for testing if you need to. But at the bare minimum, check all the fluids and test them, and put them in your report. This is the simple way I do it. Check with your lab, who you're using, how they want their samples taken. Always document with a photograph. If you need to ship your samples to a lab, track and signatures. You have to keep that chain of evidence, even on the public side and the private side. You need to know where your stuff's going, because when I start pulling samples, I don't know where this case is going. This case may go nowhere, maybe just a folder. It may end up in litigation 2 or 3 years from now. I don't want anybody saying, was this evidence tampered with, or did you break the chain at any point because we sent it to a private lab? But in the pictures, you'll see the first picture to the left is a vampire pump. You can get them on Amazon. You can see the small hose comes from the top, you put it right into the engine, couple pumps, and it fills up the container below it. You never need to touch it. Put a cap on it, put some evidence tape on it, and send it out. If you're going to pull oil from a vehicle, I always like telling you pull it from the oil filter, because if the vehicle's not running, it won't get water in there as easily as the engine pan, as the oil pan does. So if you're really going to pull a sample, pull the oil filter off, pull it from there, and then bag and tag your filter as well.
There's very rarely that you as a public sector person will be having to do this, but it's good to know how. And like I said, if a private guy is kind enough to contact you, say, hey, look, I'm going to that junkyard today. I'd like to maybe have you meet me there and tell me what you saw. But as you can see from our side of the equation, not many things go into courtrooms that are messy like this. Judges just don't allow that. Car fires are a mess to begin with. So your photographs become absolutely paramount and appear all over the place in different documentation scenes. So thanks to DCARI, you had a very good block on evidence photography from another fellow New Jersey American, Dave Phelan. And, that's good business for you, and good. Nobody will be happier that the photographs are good and crisp and clear than you when you're asked to see them in a pressure situation. You will be happy that you took good, clear photographs.
And just dealing with the photographs, you should be looking at your photographs before you leave the scene. If you're using a digital camera, an iPad, whatever you're using, check your pictures before you leave the scene and make sure they're good quality. Make sure they're what you want. Make sure it depicts exactly what you're looking at. There's no sense in not taking as many pictures as possible. 7, 8, 9 pictures of the same item is not uncommon. The way the light shined on it, a different angle, it shows a different thing. You're only storing these pictures. It's not a Polaroid anymore that you've got to, protect and put away. It's a digital media. Keep it on the screen, put it on your cloud, send it to whoever has to, but keep those pictures and take many of them. Okay, this is something simply I do. I take a picture before and after, and I put all my evidence in my can. My lab wants a lined can, and all my other items go in a bag with the evidence tag on them. with this case number. My rulers, my blade, and my gloves would go in another bag, and they would go to my evidence storage locker until this case is cleared out in case they ever wanted to see him for contamination. That's just the way my company works. Large scene losses, it's another whole animal. You may have to hire an outside company. For fire departments, it's not just throwing everything out the window and on the front lawn. That's not good business for either the public or the private side anymore. So try to consider that. This is a large loss in New Jersey. Okay, it went down to they thought the vehicle may have caused this fire. So we had to deal with the garage. We had to deal with the collapse of the building around the garage. This is where you may need expertise. It may be outside of the public realm that you don't want to get involved in it. You just want to document the scene real well to the best of your ability and put in your report. It was more detailed of a scene than I considered, and I didn't have expertise to do that. But go back when the public guys are there and get the information from them. As you're digging this out, stand next to them, take a picture. We're never going to tell you no. Take a picture with us. We're more than happy to have you there. But large scenes, again, this is just a couple more pictures of it. You can see the whole second floor collapsed on this vehicle in the garage, and the vehicle needed to be examined. It needed to be removed and taken to a lab and looked through thoroughly. And this wasn't the condition to do it. This happened in November. It was very cold outside, so we wanted to get it out as soon as possible into a safe condition that we can look at the vehicle thoroughly.
So eliminating things is always a big deal. And, you know, if there was a camera here, you have cross shorting, the garage door opens in the middle of the night. What's the story with the ventilation? But if you have some, if you look around for some leads, you're going to find, if you don't look around, you're not going to find any leads. So if you divide 0 into 0, that's how you do your work. You're going to end up with 0. So it really becomes important. You're glad to see that there was only one car in the garage, because shoveling a 2-car garage, you know, you're glad that there's only one in there. But is the vehicle where the fire started, or is it the structure attacking the vehicle? So you can sometimes cut things in half by things that you can recover. Some of the cars are extremely smart. The box can tell you some things. Joey will talk about that a little bit further into the class. But there are things certainly that we need to do in a certain pecking order that's gonna help us. It's not helping us as a shortcut. It's just something that we need to look for, because if we have it, we certainly want to put it to use.
So again, you just see different angles of the picture. We were able to get above the second floor through a hole and look down at the scene, which was a nice picture. And then we want to get a picture of the vehicle up in the air. And then again, we just gridded it out slowly and methodically, one grid at a time in a box, and take it back to the lab, and we'll go through it piece by piece. So these are large, complex scenes. Not only do we need to deal with the car, but we need to deal with the structure as well. Anything in that garage, service panels, gas, anything that was stored in there needs to be looked at and eliminated. But this is just one way we do it out here.
And the same as structures. Debris is important, right? You got to know where the debris is, and you got to know where the debris came from. So that becomes critical, just like if there was no car here whatsoever. You and I would have to be concerned with it. Great job right there. The floor is taken down all the way to the concrete. That's the way you want to be showing a scene.
But again, you'll see in this picture, we took out the center where the car was, everything under the car, but you still have a 2-car garage that needs to be shoveled out. On the left side, you'll see the refrigerator next to the shovel. On the right side, there's a generator back there. There's a toolbox. That all has to be looked at and eliminated as well. Just because we believe it was the car that caused this fire, it doesn't have to be. It has to go through the methodical, systematic approach and eliminate everything in the area so nobody can doubt you later on. Okay, so do people still burn their fires? I'm hoping arson is a crime where you live, because it surely is in New Jersey. Getting somebody to prosecute, it's another question, a whole nother issue for us in New Jersey. But just some of the basic facts out there. This came out of the FBI crime study. There's the definition of it. Based on the FBI stats, there's 13.3 arson offenses for every 100,000 people. It's estimated only 10% of all arson cases are cleared. Why is that? Evidence of an arson is nearly impossible to preserve. Okay, the fire, the water, everything just destroys it. So getting it is tough. So when you can get it, preserve it the best you can. Arson investigators' most important witness are the firefighters. You know, you should be looking at what you see when you pull up. Try to make a mental note of where the fire was in the vehicle and the structure. What did you see? What color were the flames? That's part of the investigation process. Your witnesses, talk to the first due. If you have helmet cams, make sure that gets downloaded and sent to the right authority so we can look at that. The offense of arson is punishable by 14 years in prison. 16 if done during a public disorder, okay? And if dishonestly or financial gain is there. So these are all crimes with heavy penalties, but prosecuting them's tough. It's on our side to do that.
This is certainly why the FBI can tell you that they don't really have a horse in the arson race. Although they're there, they compile good statistics. There is a root for this arson crime, and it certainly is, ATF extremely strong in that infield, probably the best in the country without a doubt.
A Rockville man on the scene of a house fire today just walked up to police and said he set the fire. News Chopper 7 was over the blaze on South Horners Lane late this afternoon, and police are now questioning that man after fire investigators called the fire suspicious. Kevin Lewis was there when the man turned himself into police. He is live in Rockville with the details. Kevin.
Yeah, Allison, it's surely not every day that someone walks up to you claiming to have intentionally set a house on fire. But that is exactly what happened to us today, and the fire was really fierce. Take a look at the siding of this home, just burnt to a crisp. Fire and police investigators say our interview with the man who went by the name Carlos could become a crucial piece of evidence.
Me, I set it on fire.
It was an unsolicited street-side confession. This man, who would only say his name was Carlos, approached ABC 7 News photographer Jeff Rose, admitting he set this home on fire.
I just poured gasoline on the floor, set it on fire, and went to buy a drink and came back.
When asked why, Carlos repeatedly claimed he wanted police and the media to know about what he called deplorable living conditions inside this home.
Why did you call the police?
Because I have before.
How did setting this fire help you?
Just so you could get here, so you could get for your attention.
Following our interview, Carlos walked up to these Rockville police officers.
I set it on fire.
Just look at their faces, absolutely stunned to hear a man claim to be an arsonist.
Oh my goodness.
So it doesn't happen every day, but people are out there doing it. And sometimes they just walk up and want to give you their information, and you have to listen. Don't ask too many questions, let them talk to you. So what are some of the reasons people burn their vehicles? How many people out there lease a vehicle? Do you know what your mileage cost is overage? Most people that go buy a new vehicle are looking for cost of monthly payments. They're not worried about the car in 3 years when they put an excess of 30,000 miles on it. At $1 a mile, that's $30,000 you owe the car carrier before you even bring the vehicle back. What are your insurance costs? Do you know your insurance costs before you buy the vehicle? Or are you sticker shocked 30 days later? Is there vehicle damage from the lease? Was it unrepaired? Is there crime concealment? Relationships issues? Does that play a fact into it? What other issues are going on out there? We just had the economy go bad, financial issues, loss of a job, downslide of the economy, divorce, spite and revenge. Has anybody ever had an emotion play into a physical act? Nobody's ever punched a wall over a girl or a boy, right? So that happens. That's going on out there. People are doing it. And here's a couple of my cases that, it occurred. Okay, the one in the bottom left, the gentleman had bought this car. It was leasing it for his girlfriend without his wife knowing it. After a while, she got tired of him. He decided to write some wording on the side of the car. When that didn't work, a couple weeks later, he went and burned the vehicle. Instead of just taking the spare key and taking the vehicle back, which was his, he went in this route. And now he's doing a couple months in jail. So it's out there, spite and revenge. It's not always this blatant in front of you that you can see it this good, but the cases do exist.
Yeah, it's always great to ask, people, like who's got it in for you, whatever it might be. But,
Have launched an arson and
people do things for a whole myriad of reasons, same as they set fire to other properties. But like narcotics or anything else, you follow the money, you're probably going to end up with some kind of lead.
Technical issue, sorry.
Have launched an arson investigation after surveillance video captured the moment someone set a truck on fire. Now, the video shows a man ride his bike up to a home near Lorena and Fairbanks before pouring out some gasoline onto a truck in the driveway, setting it on fire. Now, Sanger firefighters arrived, put the flames out before they damaged any nearby homes or property. But you see that little explosion right there. Investigators are still searching for the suspect and don't have a motive for the attack.
Okay, you can start looking at that stuff. You know, all the new cameras out there, rings, that's what that's called on a ring camera. Start looking at that as part of your investigation. Put that in your procedures. Looking for virtual cameras, rings through AT&T, Comcast, they all have these cameras out there. Next, start looking at that. But I'll show you an example of a 2018 Toyota. It was 3 months old. He was behind on his payments already. His business was in trouble. You can see a quick picture of the front, the driver's side and the rear. Very little damage. On the driver's side, you can see a little smoke sooting out the rear window, out the front. But once we go to the other side, you'll see similar. Look at the positions of the windows. We tried several times to get these windows at the same position on a similar car. And it took us a long time. It took us almost an hour to get the windows exactly positioned the same way all the way around. Couple pictures. Okay, once we open the driver's side front door, okay, that's the driver's side front seat. Look at how the patterns are flowing. Okay, we got the patterns on that seat going from the console around the corner. Okay, we need to figure out what's going on there. Look at the headliner's already fallen down a little bit. You see some damage on the passenger side front seat. Okay.
So it's always good to see that fire setters don't always know too much about the fuel that they're using, and thank goodness they don't know too much about the behavior of fire. You see useless acts of vandalism like this, some newspapers on the floor, some other robust fuel, something thermally thin that's going to get itself excited pretty quickly, starts to get the upholstery involved, and then the fire setter closes the door. So now in this small compartment, O2 gets used up rapidly. This still needs a brand new interior. The car could be totaled by the insurance company, but we see these types of fire. Somebody going to teach somebody else a lesson. Could be a person who is not going to confront you to a fist fight, but will gladly on the first week key walk your car. And maybe if it's unlocked on the second week, you will find a fire inside your car. So these types of things happen, but in a lot of cases, it's good that hopefully the fire setter doesn't know as much about the behavior of fire as we might.
So as we go through the car, we started looking in the front. And you'll see on the passenger side front seat, it's a spout. On the passenger side front seat is the cap. You know, the simple question, can these be explained? It's not illegal to have them there. It just needs to be explained at a scene of a fire. What were they doing on the floor? What were they doing on the front seat? Okay. So you can see them there, nice and pronounced. Then we'll go to the rear of the vehicle. We open up the driver's side rear. We see the fuel can there, first and foremost. That's above the headliner, which is concerning. But look at the rear of the driver's seat. Look at the headrest. Look how high that heat is up there. Why do I have so much burn pattern up there versus down low? Same thing with the driver's side rear seat. You'll see by the door edge there above the gas can, we have almost looks like something was flowing down that seat. So we need to explain that. We need to show our patterns and look at that fuel in there. By the way, that can of DEF in the back caused major problems for us on this case because we had to eliminate that as being in the vehicle at the time of the fire. We physically had to go back to the tow yard, get serial numbers off that, get his ledgers and purchase orders to prove that wasn't in the vehicle at the time of the fire. So it depends on how severe your case is and where it's going. This was going criminal for a while, and then they pleaded out on it. But continuing on there, look at the headrest, look at the patterns. Again, can be explained? Can it be explained why it doesn't have a cap and a spout on it is even more to. Driver's side rear door, again, looks like something was almost poured down the door rest across the top. The pattern's going downward. So that needs to be explained. Now we start getting into lifting up the headliner and we find another gas can under there without a cap. You can see the cap in the second picture. So that needs to be questioned, but you can see underneath that headliner, that seat's in good condition. The leather's not destroyed or damaged. So it's all high on this fire. The headliner came down and smothered most of this out. A third and fourth gas cap, again, can they be explained why they were there, not on the cans is the question we had. But then under the driver's side front seat, we find a piece of newspaper rolled up going under the seat up the driver's side edge. We call that a trailer. It had some gasoline odors on it. We sent it to the lab, got approved, and we were able to find out what the local paper was, and we couldn't get a delivery address on it, but we were able to get an address that it's close to him. And this is what we end up taking out of the vehicle. All these cans of gas, none had a cap on them at the time, 2 trailers, and some of the information. He had doused this car completely with 5 gallons of gasoline, but as Barry said, poor ventilation smothered the fire out.
So you take a look at this, and had this person been smart enough to pour the car, would have took them a while to get around all 4 doors, pour the car. Gasoline is a liquid, just like water. It's immediately seeking the lowest point it can get to. So if he took the cans with him, didn't leave us any cans, leave us any caps, he turns around and says, look, I don't know what you're trying to say here. There's 17 gallons of gasoline in the car. So it's like real estate. Location, location, location. How much gasoline did you put on the right rear floor? Does that get into your tank also? Do you how much gasoline is on the back deck above the back seat? How much gasoline do you find in the carpeting? Is there gas? Because all of this would have had survivability in this type of, lack of ventilation fire. So taking the container with you, in this case, it was fortunate that the containers also had survivability, but location is a big deal for you. If it's a fuel that came with the car, is in the car, location, location, location becomes a big deal.
So you're getting ready for your examination. Basic understanding of vehicles important. You should have some specialized training. There's a lot of programs out there for specialized training. If you're definitely into vehicle fires, I would recommend a VOTEC school once a week at night. Try to get some understanding. The industry changes so rapidly. Trying to keep up with the new technology is the toughest part for me, especially. Every week or so, I get a new flash mail. Something's changed. General Motors, Porsche, someone has changed something on the car, and I need to get back to it. Mechanical experience is always great. Okay. Not everybody is mechanically trained, but a mechanic is good. Specialized training and investigations. The IAAI offers a couple of good courses. CFI Trainers, another great spot. They have a whole section on vehicle fires now. You should be looking at all that. Keep reference materials. The internet's great for reference material, stuff like that. Chilton's manuals, you can go online to all data.
Just down there.
Yeah, we were just in Toyota. I'll show you a video of Toyota. They had given us about 10 vehicles to do burns on, brand new vehicles. They still had the plastic on the seats. Me and Barry wanted to drive these home and not burn them. But that's what they asked us to do. And we did the demos, and we'll show you one of them later. So we talked about earlier, there's 33,000 parts at a minimum of some of these cars. What about the bigger cars? Okay, what about like the big Cadillac Escalades? I'm sure there's more than 33,000 in an average vehicle. You get bad days and you get bad parts. Somebody doesn't put it in right. Somebody changes the design and it alters it. And you just find out they don't work well together. So you have problems. My suggestion to you is you should have a basic understanding of the basic systems. This is a picture of the basic systems you should know. Steering, braking, air conditioning, electrical system, the start, the transmission, exhaust. These are the basic systems you should have an understanding about. You really can't do a good vehicle fire investigation if you don't know how they work, other than opening the door, putting your foot on the brake and pushing the button. You need a little bit more basic knowledge of that. And if you're interested in vehicle fires, you need to figure out how to get that and what works best for you. But that's what you do. More advanced systems now becoming. Here's a picture about 2 years old of a Cadillac. This is some of the newer systems they were talking about. Everything from lane departure to adaptive front lights to exhaust sounds to hill hold. These are all new systems that work through modules. So again, you may have to get an engineer if you're starting to get more detailed on this and you have a smaller fire and you're going to a system. So engineers are becoming a big part of my everyday investigations. And I would foresee that it's going to hurt the public side more and more, because as the cars get more complicated, let's say, it's getting harder and harder to get engineers that are working as firemen as well. So what else do we need? We need to protect ourselves. We need some overalls, safety glasses, hard hat, safety boots if you're working in any kind of a yard or around heavy equipment that could fall, gloves. By all means, please, at the bare minimum, an N95 mask, even when you're just outside pushing debris around. All that stuff comes in. The IAAI has a great white paper you should be reading about that, and a first aid kit. I can't tell you how many times I've cut myself or need a tweezer to get a piece of metal out of my hand because I wasn't wearing a set of gloves.
A buddy of ours, Chris Elrod, who teaches car fires around the country with us, he just takes his knife out before we start a class and cuts his finger. And then he says, well, I'm good now. I'm ready to go on. I got my cut for the day. So, but you're going to get cut on car fires. There is shards everywhere. Things are bent up. The fire service has twisted the metal in a lot of cases to get things open. And we can't dwell enough about respiratory protection. So we know on hot days, you're going to cheat and have short sleeve shirts on. That's not good. You know, you think you're just going to run there, take a look, you're going to whack your head. These things are so important. You want to go home to your family. You want to be safe. And this is the way to do it. It's not always, and as long as we're there, you got to clean your tools because you're doing a lot of things with tools. We know Simple Green HD, wing the tools in the bucket, get them clean. Still use some Dawn on your boots if you want, because the Simple Green is kind of tough on boots, but don't throw your Dawn away because it's still good on oily ducks. Remember that. So we got a lot of things. You'll go through hundreds of pairs of gloves. How you package your evidence is up to you and who you're trying to take it to. A little different on private than public, depending on the labs, but you need to know the rules. Stay inside those rules, even if it's as simple as an SOP. Somebody is going to ask you a question about that. So they're looking for you to break a rule absolutely anywhere. So do your job, do all these things, take that stuff somewhere else to clean it, wash it, or chuck it out. Coveralls is a great idea. Tyvek is probably a better idea. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Whether it's winter, you still need water. It needs to be on board for a bunch of different reasons. So don't give up on your personal protective equipment and your safety.
And remember, for your private guys, you're going to the scene of your personal vehicles, and then you're going back home and putting your kids in the back seat or something like that. Think about what you're bringing back with you. You drive your car, and all of a sudden your wife drives your car, your little son's in there playing with the steering wheel, all that contamination you brought back into the vehicle. I like to tell you, Tyvek suit, take it off at the scene, throw it away, bill it out to whoever you have to, but try not to bring that stuff back. I keep my boots in the back of my truck. I never put them inside. Think about all the clean cab concepts that are coming out in fire trucks. And you guys on the public side, if you bring home cars, you know, you never want to put your small kids in those cars unless you've cleaned them out. You're bringing debris and fire stuff home every day from every fire you've been and everybody else that uses your car. Just think safe. Protective equipment, we just talked about. Documentation, okay? Pens, pencils, magic markers, ink pads, whatever you may need to document that vehicle. Remember, you're dealing with a rust bucket now. It's metal, okay? You're not just gonna take a ballpoint pen and make a mark on it. You're not gonna use, you need crayons, markers, pens, ink, evidence collection tools, if you use them, or evidence preservation tools. What are you gonna preserve that evidence until somebody out there collects it for you? If it's raining, do you have a tarp to throw over it until you get somebody? Automotive tools, I can tell you whatever you have isn't gonna be enough. You need more, more, more. There's specialty screws coming out, specialty bolts, Halligan, hex heads. Anything I think I'm caught up with, I need more afterwards. Other equipment you may need, jack stands, floor jacks, depending on where you're working on the vehicle, hacksaws, power tools, sawzalls, depending on what you're working and what you're doing to do. So you can never have enough tools when you're going to an automotive yard, because that's going to be 30 or 40 miles away from your house and 50 miles away from any hardware store that you can get the supplies you need. Documentation. Your weather pads, I like the Right in the Range. I'm not advertising them, but I think they're very well. They do well for us. Even with greasy and sticky hands, they work well. Cameras, Strong flashes. Consider a second point and shoot in case your first one goes bad. Spare batteries. Memory cards. Are you using one memory card per case, or are you doing multiple on there? Did you just come off a structure fire the night before? You think you took 2,000 pictures, and now you're going to do a car fire with 2 bodies in it, and you've got 3 or 4 shots left before you got to drain the memory card. You should have a department policy on your memory cards. Is it 1 card per scene? Are you storing it? Are you downloading and cleaning it? How do you do it? Digital note taking. There's a whole bunch of apps out there for your iPads, your phones, that you can just speak into and do your notes. I would caution you to make sure you leave, before you leave the scene, listen to them, make sure they're there, make sure your notes are what you want, and upload them immediately, because you hit the wrong button on a digital note taker and your whole file's gone.
Just because it's a car doesn't mean your notes aren't discoverable. You need to know the rules in your state, in your county, perhaps what your prosecutor wants. Don't think it's kind of willy-nilly, a small thing. If your grading of your arson statutes is done by value, I mean, some cars can be easily $150,000. So somebody is looking at perhaps on the public side, if it's an owner give up and they're having someone else burn their car, valued at $150,000 to $200,000 because they have to get out from under it, the statute could be written, and if the crimes are relegated in your state by degrees or a monetary value, that crime could come with the presumption of a custodial sentence. So it's just because it's a car doesn't mean it's not got some activity involved with it.
And real quick on the tools, just remember you're dealing with cars that are metal. A lot of stuff with magnets work well for you. Big flashlights that you use on a structure fire aren't great under dashboards. So just remember what you're working on. Magnets work great for that. We talked a little about considerations. Here's just some high points for you. Consider where the car is. I don't ever work on a vehicle on a working highway, even if I have a blocker vehicle. It's just not something I like. If it's that important, we'll shut the highway down, do what we have to do. If there's scenes or bodies in that have to be removed, we're going to close the highway down afterwards. Check with your fire department. How do they suppress the activity? Do they use foam, weather conditions, stuff like that? So impound and salvage yards, vehicle access, lighting, weather, that all plays a effect into it. What time of day you can get to these yards. When you show up, if you're driving 2 hours, is it pouring rain now that you've got to be outside and do this, or can you come back? All considerations.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be, this is another good teaching point where you got to go to the scene. The tow truck driver and the single policemen that are out there in the middle of the night trying to clear this, their goal is to get traffic moving, make the road safe again and passable. So fire department pulls up, comes off with a trash line, a nice wide stream. They wash things from one side to the other. The evidence that you may be looking for went underneath the car, washed down into the berm. Nobody else is looking for that but you. Go there, take a few pictures of it, get a Google map, look at where on the interstate it burnt, where on the logging road, behind a factory where you may have had some other burns in a bad neighborhood. So document all that. But sometimes you go out there and all of a sudden you're finding an aberrant shoe print down in the berm or something. You find something else there. You find some personal belongings that may have been thrown out during overhaul. Maybe the back seat is on fire. Fire department decides to just hook it and pull it out because it's smoldering, and there's evidence of value on that seat. So record drivers sweeping up all kinds of stuff, throwing it inside your car. It's getting contaminated early on. So some of the containers and different things you may pick up, do the math again. 0 into 0, you don't go there. Don't expect to get anything from that scene.
So these are just some of your fuel sources. I've given you some information. You should keep these with you. If you don't know off the top of your head, you should be able to reference them. And if you're going to say something about gasoline or diesel fuel in your report, you should highlight it or footnote at least the basic ignition temperatures and why you're utilizing them and where you got them from. So this is just that slide for you to use. Again, we need to determine all the fuel sources, the engine oil, the antifreeze, brake fluid, transmission fluid, windshield washer fluid. These are all your ignition points. You need to consider them in all your investigations and document that. If you're going to say the windshield washer had nothing to do or contributed with this fire, you should know the size of the container. My newest truck is like 2.5 gallons of that stuff versus my wife's car, which is a thimble. So you should know the difference. And if you're going to put in your report that this was a contributing factor, you should be able to say the volume of windshield washer reservoir held this much in your report. Just don't say haphazardly, the windshield washer could have been a contributing factor. It's just going to get you in trouble. More fuel loads. Again, remember everybody used to take the spray paint can, hook a big lighter up to it, and atomize your fuels, make a big blowtorch. Same thing. Look at it. This happened to be a picture of a high pressure fuel pump that leaked due to an O-ring. So just keep that in mind. Fuel systems. Okay, they're much more complicated than they used to be. It's not just a carburetor and a fuel pump anymore. They're a lot more complicated. You're seeing higher pressures in the fuel injection systems, and they're going higher and higher these days. So just remember, some of these are closed loop systems. So when you go and crack them with a wrench or pull them apart, they still could be under pressure. Eyeglasses, safety protection is all required for that stuff. So what's in the vehicle that's burning these days? There's two main types of plastics. Okay, you have a thermal plastic and a thermal set. You can see the definitions right here on them. In 921, they have a good chart showing you right where they are in the class. That should be your next slide. But these are your basics. Okay, this is right out of 921, table 26.3.3.1. This is a good thing. I take a copy of it. I keep it right in my chart when I'm out looking at vehicles. It just gives me a highlight of where things could be. This isn't a guarantee that this is the only place you're going to find ABS in the body panels. It could be other places, but this is the highlights through NFPA. Something to keep with you.
Stinks. Sorry. Yeah, that's.
So here's some a test burn we did, and we used a flare in the dashboard, but you can start seeing the plastics running out there. Sorry for the video. It was after a Friday night party. So here's your video. You can start to see the dripping of the fluids dripping down onto the carpet, and that could cause spot fires for you, right? You can be thinking, oh, I have a fire that started on the floor here, and truly it's not on the floor. It started in the dashboard. It could be electrical, but we have enough plastics running down on the ground that we have a spot fire. And this could go through many places in the car, including vehicles that have center consoles in the ceiling. If the fire breaks through the windshield and attacks that center console that's made of plastic, that starts dripping. You could have what looks like a trailer going from the front all the way to the rear, especially on these bigger vehicles.
Sometimes with no floor mats, that plastic is running, as you can see it there, running pretty good. It's a not a great video, but a pretty good fire. But we end up with pool fires in the carpeting. Although the carpeting doesn't want to get involved, it can certainly throw us a little bit of a curve that maybe somebody poured something on the left front floor, as opposed to us getting a pool fire from running plastics. But after a while, like anything else, the street is the teacher. You look at a few, you have a car fire class in your area, you burn 10 or 11 cars, you get a chance to dig them, you get a chance to do a compartment exercise at every car. Before you know it, you start to learn a little bit more just from seeing things happen.
And you can see getting the fabric is tough, or the leather going on the seat is tough. That's the hard part. Once you break through that and get to the foam, that urethane foam goes up very rapidly. And once that gets involved, it's really off to the races. The floor padding, all that stuff, getting past the initial cloth and fabrics is the hard part. It's not going to be sitting there with a Bic lighter. You need to really cut that fabric open to get the foam going. And that's where you get the rambunctious fires. So here's some basic metals for your temperatures. Always good information to keep. We're starting to see more and more of these. Magnesium's making a comeback in a lot of cars. Us older guys remember when you used to go to Porsche fires and BMW fires and Volkswagen, don't spray the water on the engine compartment because the magnesium would pop and end up on your rubber boots. It's making a comeback. Lightweight, cost, it's all coming back more and more. And the aluminum, now everybody's seen the commercial for the Ford all military grade aluminum trucks. and how they're burning is another whole question. So this is a test burn of an all aluminum Ford F-250. I believe it was in the Mojave Desert. The link's on there if you want to go look at it and do more research. It's been cut down. It was on a tow demo for towing range. And you can see the fire starts. It's got a cover on it, which I'm sure affects the fire patterns, but that's not really why I'm showing the video. I want you to see how fast the fire rapidly goes across this engine compartment, and what's left of the vehicle at the end is the big teaching point in this one. As you'll start seeing, the engine becomes more and more involved. The driver's side is already slumping down. We're starting to see the headlight, and the fender's already fallen off the vehicle. Now the grill's starting to go towards the driver's side, so we're getting some slumping there. And you'll start to see the aluminum and magnesium start popping on this thing. This whole video, I think, is 22 minutes. There's your magnesium exploding. And now we're burning the vehicle down to the ground. I've been involved in about 4 of these so far, and all but one I was actually able to look at. All the others were so badly burned, basically in dumpsters for us to look at. That's what's left of them. So there's your vehicle still burning down. More and more. And there's your scene at the end of the fire. The frame rails, the engine block, some other components are left. Everything else just gets swept up to the side of the road, and the fire extinguisher that tried to put it out with. So these are becoming more and more common on the road, these F-series. If you're getting them, if you have any good photos, I'd appreciate it if you give me a holler and take a look at them, because I'm not getting too many. This is the only one I've actually been able to see completely. This was a 2020 Ford Raptor SVT, I'm told. It's about an $80,000 vehicle. This is about an 8-minute fire. He was directly across the street in Philadelphia from a firehouse. By the time he ran across the street and the engine came across, they figured about 8 to 10 minutes before putting water on it. But look at the damage on this aluminum body. You have an A post on the passenger side completely consumed, the B post consumed. There is no roof on the vehicle, no front fender on the vehicle. So all the pictures walking around the vehicle, even the driver's side, you had extreme heat come through the doors that we burnt centers out of them. So this is what the new technology is doing to us for lightweight. So you're getting to the vehicle. We need to look at that VIN number. We need to see what that VIN does for us. That 17 characters do a lot. It really does a lot for us, and you should consider. Sorry about that. You need to consider what these 17 digits do for you and how they work. Okay, you need to do define them, look at them all, make sure you're looking at the right vehicle, make sure that's what you're supposed to be looking at. Okay, this is a breakdown. Oh, I think we lost them. Oh my God. I got it. Yeah. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. So this is a good tab for you to keep in your reference materials. This breaks down the 17 digits on the dashboard, country manufacturing, the vehicle manufacturer, the vehicle type, the brand, the year, the assembly plant, and the production. These are all important information for you to have if you're doing a vehicle investigation, because you're not going to be able to see the vehicle in its entirety. You're not going to know, is it an SLT, is it an EX, is it an LX, which has different components and different options in it. Going through this, we'll even give you the engine, body style, all that good information that you can decode it with. So here's some information. This is spot position number 1 and 2 in the VIN. On the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see a QR code. If you take a picture of that, it'll take you to the website that I get all this information from. It's about 9 or 10 pages, but it'll provide you all the data for the next 1 or 2 slides that you'll see. But it's all good information for you to keep.
If it's been stolen and revinned, you know, on the public side, and you got a rash of people that are doing that, it seems kind of archaic, but it still gets done. They revin cars. go to junkyards and then steal another car, try and put the VIN in. You may run into the original car somewhere being burnt. So you'll see different types of rivets. You'll see things that are done. There's a lot of shenanigans going on. You just got to be slick enough to try and pick it up if you can.
So position number 10 is the year. And prior to 1980, VINs only had 13 codes in it. There was no standard. So if you're getting a vehicle prior to 1980, a classic collector, a collection car, something like that, you're gonna have to go back to a different system. But from 1980 all the way through 2039, this will be your code for position number 10 on the VIN. So in this year for 2021, your 10th position is going to be an M on all vehicles. So when you count over 10 positions, it should be an M for 2021. Good information for your report and how you decoded it. So where are the VINs located on cars now? They used to be in a lot of locations. Currently this year, they have to be in the dashboard, on the dashboard driver's side, in the windshield, and on the B post. For next year, that changes. My understanding is Audi was just given approval to only have one VIN location at the dashboard on the driver's side only. So that's going to change. And I'm seeing a lot more other vendors are looking for the same option. We can all save a penny or half a penny here by doing it this way. But your most common locations are going to be your windshield on the driver's side. Okay, your B post is going to be there still. The bulkhead wall, I'll show you on Japanese cars, you can locate them on the bulkhead wall. Passenger side strut tower on some German manufacturers. Passenger side front floor now on Lexus and Toyota. And under the underside of the engine block, new on Hyundai and Kia, is just become something pretty recent in the last year, year and a half. And behind the rear license plate on Mercedes-Benz are all standard areas now for license plates. And I'm going to give you a website you can look at shortly, and it'll give you other locations if you get in a jam. So here's the strut tower. This is a BMW. The lower picture is before it got burned. The upper picture is after it got burned. You can take a crayon or whatever you want and just scratch it into it and highlight it for yourself. I would take a picture prior to that and then one of it altered as well. It just works better. The engine blocks, Hyundai and Kia have went back to putting it on the bottom of the engine block. You can see both Honda and Kia logos on the lower right one. The upper left one is also a Kia, and the bottom left is an older General Motors product. For us old guys, you want the matching numbers cars. That's what it used to look like. Toyota and Lexus have moved it to the front of the passenger side seat. You'll see the little bracket there, and it says frame number / VIN. But the problem here is you have to dig out the interior of the car. You have to dig out that floorboard to get to it. Pull the mat up, move the seat back, and that will get to your VIN number. But that will survive the most drastic fires I've seen. That always survives. And the lower right is out of a Maserati that's welded into the frame as well. So there's multiple places you can get these VIN numbers. Behind the rear license plate on the Mercedes-Benz, that will survive as long as you don't get too much damage into the cargo area. The B post, more than likely, are always going to be gone.
When in doubt, you always want to take a picture of any type of sticker that you find along the way. So the beauty of digital cameras, you see something, you can take that picture. Joey already made that kind of clear. You need to have raw data. So even though you can't totally see until you mark it up with a crayon or whatever substance you're using to create contrast to make that VIN jump out a little bit, you still want to show the court or whoever that the reason you did this is because you could not read the number. You're not altering anything. You're just enhancing it.
So this is what I was saying on Japanese cars. This is a pretty good makeup. right between the wiper blades where the bulkhead wall comes together. If you reach under there on the engine compartment, you'll see the tab, which is the upper left picture. You can pull that forward and the VIN number will be stamped on that. It's part of the body. It cannot be removed. It's just a simple tin tab that you can pull forward. And the lower right one shows me pulling it forward again, highlighting it with a crayon, just so I can read it. But that's going to be Japanese built cars, even if they're built in America, Toyota, Honda, Nissan. That's where I've been finding them more and more on. So you should be okay with that. So you need to do a little research on that VIN. We need to figure out what's going on with it. So this is some of the stuff. Why do we want to do it? We want to check. Okay, first of all, we want to make sure that's the vehicle we're looking at. That's our correct vehicle. Going to a junkyard or storage yard, the guy has a number, he pulls a vehicle. There may be 50 or 60 of the same car in that lot. You want to make sure you're investigating the right car that you were assigned to. We want to make sure there's open or unopened recalls issues. So here's a one right here. Again, a QR code. It's for a 2010 BMW 328. If you click on that QR code, it'll take you to vindecoder.com and it'll show you how to decode it, and just keep that website in your records. It's great. It's free. But that QR code will take you to there and it'll decode that car right in the picture for you. So what's a recall? This is the technical term. It's basically if there's a safety issue with the car, the federal government can do a voluntary recall or mandate recall. And there's a lot of recalls out there on a lot of new cars. So what do we need to do to find them? We need to go to websites. Okay, currently Kia has about 1.4 million cars under recall. It goes all the way back to 2011 through 2019 models. And I believe they just updated that as well into the 2020 models. They had a recall for a bad part in the engine. As you can see in the upper left corner, that bearing came through the crankshaft and ripped right through the oil pan. That seems to be a common one for Kia, but you need to look for the recalls, and I'll give you a website to do that. Here's another picture of that Kia. This is the engine compartment behind the starter motor, and you can see the crank for the piston going up and with the bolts on the upper right picture. The lower right one is the two holes in the block that the bolts came through. If you're getting a Kia fire or a Hyundai fire, you should be considering looking for the recalls. There's so many out there, and doing a diagnostic on that. So here's some websites for you to use. All great websites. They're all free, except for the bottom one, which is alldata.com. That is a paid service, but it's a very good paid service one. That will give you everything you need to know about the vehicle, including wire schematics, drawings, basically how the manufacturer built the car. You can get through that. Great website for you to look at. These will all work for you. I would urge you to make sure you document in your report. And I take a screenshot of them, because the internet's never going to change, right? What's there today will be there tomorrow, I guarantee you. I don't want to take that chance. I take a screenshot of it. I include it in my photos or in my log. I may not provide it with my report, but I'll have it in my notes if it's ever brought up later on where I got that information from. I can provide it. Here's some other great areas for you to look at. These manufacturers all have good information about their vehicles. OnStar, Carfax, law enforcement, you get it for free. You just have to provide them with a letter on letterhead, and they'll give you an access code you can get on your phone. Easy Pass on New Jersey East Coast we can use, and National Pass across the country. But again, keep these in your report, the date you got them, how you got them, and the information you got from them. Most of these vendors will work with you. If you send them a letter on letterhead on the fire side asking for information, they'll provide what they have. If it's law enforcement side, I would recommend you go through your proper procedures. You may need a warrant, a subpoena. I'm a fire guy, so I wouldn't know.
These are things that certainly can contradict alibis, witness statements, all different types of things. So these are things that you can check, and if not, if the insurance company checks them on the strength of a letter from the public side, arson immunity laws also apply to motor vehicle fires. It's not just for structures. And usually they reply rather quickly. It's not a two-way street. You tell them, I'm from X police department, X agency. We're doing this investigation. We need a copy of your file. And there we go.
So again, more social media websites, consider these. Again, they're all good information. If you're looking for somebody in particular, modify their name a little bit. John Smith, maybe Jon, maybe Jonh. He may alter it a little bit, so look a little left, a little right. I've gone to many social media sites that they have 3 or 4. They're a nice boy on the first page. On the second boy, they're a bad boy. The third page, they're a ninja warrior. So just keep on those sites and look for them. And again, screenshot them, whatever you have to do to save that stuff and get into your report's important. So where are we going with vehicles? We're getting crazier and crazier. What's going on in electric vehicles out this world? We can spend 3 or 4 days on just talking about electric vehicles and hybrids. Unfortunately, we don't have that kind of time. So this is some of the newest technology that's coming out in the vehicles that we're going to show you here right here. Okay, General Motors new one, regenerating braking, the heat exchangers, daylight running lights, hydraulic front brakes, low rolling resistance tires. These are all new technologies coming out. Trying to keep up with them is where the problems become for us investigators. We don't have 50 hours in a day that we can just read the data that comes out on these new cars and new vehicles and new technology. So we have to try to do it on the fly and keep up with it. So as I said earlier, your research is really important on these vehicles before you complete your report. Make sure you have all your research done, check with other people, and get as much information as you can before you complete your report. This is out of 921. This talks about the motor vehicle electrical systems in the car. We talked a little about it. It's modern vehicles are 12 volt DC, 24 DC is coming out, making a big comeback on certain vehicles. These are typically lead acid batteries or gel type batteries, stored the energy. Most cars contain 1,500 copper wires, or like I said before, 1, 2, 3 miles of wires compared to the cars of the 70s, which is 150 feet of wire. Think about us older gentlemen, taking a fuse out of an older car, a glass fuse, put it back in with a glass fuse. That's no longer the case anymore. Becoming more and more common to have 50 or 60 fuses in a car isn't uncommon. These are the basics within our electrical system we have to look at. The wiring, the battery, the alternator, your starter, your fuse panels with an S. Fusible links are being a comeback now, and the computer systems that are in these cars the technology is way above our pay grade on most of us. ECMs, body control, airbag modules have become a huge part. You can have multiple modules in there. Some talk to each other, some don't. A lot of them will store their own data. So you can get some information out of them if you have to. This is a wiring harness, pre-fire. That's what it looked like good. Okay, can you pick out the one yellow wire that we need to look at in that loom? I see about 8 or 10 different yellow wires. We talked a little bit about where fuse blocks are located these days. Okay, it should be where aren't they located? There could be as many as 5 separate fuse panels within a vehicle. The larger vehicles, your smaller vehicles, Kias are going to be 1 or 2. Your Escalades are going to be 3 to 4, and they could be all over the place. Engine compartment, dashboard, trunk, lower kick panels, behind the glove box is a Marriott for them now. So this is the BMW. You have the upper left, which is in the trunk, and the lower right, which is behind the glove box on the same vehicle. Okay, so look at those. What do you see? How many fuses are we seeing in this one vehicle? I'm counting 20 to 25 on the upper left, another 20 on the lower right. If you're going to call us electrical, do we have to look at all those fuses and document them and make sure that they're all correctly amperage, they're all correctly in the right places, they're not blown? Yes. If you look on the lower right picture, can you see the electrical tap, I call it, in there? There's a small electrical wire that's run into the system that needs to be looked at and eliminated. There's a better picture for you. Okay, so if you're going to call us electrical and put the manufacturer on notice, shouldn't we know where that wire runs or if it caused our fire first? These are small, minute things that need to be looked at in your investigation. Unlike a structure fire that you have outlets in the wall that you pull the sheetrock off and you can trace the wire because it's mostly there. In a vehicle, small wires like this could be tucked in behind stuff, routed in areas you don't recognize, and they need to be looked at and eliminated. These are the new General Motors fuse panels, okay? 2 handles, the gray handles on the upper left. Pull them up, it removes from the vehicle. You can get easy access to it, top or bottom, to look at it. The biggest problem with these is making sure you read the lid properly. If you turn the lid one way, it may be for a Cadillac CTS. You turn the lid the other way, it could be for a Cadillac ATS. Make sure you're documenting which way it is for the right vehicle.
So just when you think we're starting to run out of fun, you realize that, in case you haven't noticed, around the country, we have decided to go from red, i.e. like gasoline powered vehicles, to green. And we're going to do it in about 15 or 20 minutes, and everybody should do that. So we're burning cars a couple of weeks ago, and we realized that the entire body of a car that we're burning is the battery. So things are going to get better where the hookups are in structure fires, where people are hooking up their cars to charge them, gas stations where they're charging them. Do they have the right connection? Are people taking shortcuts? Better yet, does the fire department know anything about the red to green transfer that is occurring? How are they going to even render the vehicle safe? They may have to keep water on it, shut down roadways with these vehicles on them, and not be able to render it safe till somebody from the dealer comes there and tells them this is what you may have to do. They may not even know. So things are going to happen, but apparently we're going forward. So hopefully you're getting some training in these types of things before one of us gets hurt.
So again, it's not only what the manufacturer built into the car, it's what we brought into the car that may be causing our problems. Is this uncommon anymore in today's world, looking at vehicles as offices with all the stock in it? This isn't uncommon. So what are we bringing into the car? What could be causing our problems? How are we getting power to all these areas? Extra wire we're running, and just the cleanliness of our car. Are we putting a fuel package in there already? That's only going to take a stroke of light to get off on us. So start looking at these things. Multiple cars have multiple power ports now, no longer cigarette lighters. I haven't seen a cigarette lighter in a car in a long time, but this isn't uncommon now. Multiple ports plugged in, multiple items, e-cigarettes, cell phone, laptops, drones. Okay, on the lower right picture is the new Ford series. They're saying you can build a house just by using their F-150 running on the back of your house with these generators now. So this isn't uncommon. These are more electrical areas we've got to work on. We've got to eliminate as a possible cause and figure it out. Okay, so a small picture of a fire inside of a minivan. The lady was at her son's ball game. She came back a short time later. Somebody screamed the van was on fire. You can see it's on the passenger side. It's in and around the glove box, but you can notice by the picture, the glove box is intact. The glove box isn't opened up. It's still intact. It's just the surface plastic has run off of it. So when you start digging it down, the questions have to be, what was in that area? What was on the floor at the time of the fire? You can see the front of the seats got some damage on it, but it didn't get up into the foam real well. Ventilated limited, as Barry said before. But you'll start seeing in these pictures, the 2 circular items. Those are lithium batteries, the older style in computers. She had her laptop sitting on the floor, charging in the port. It was about 110 degrees outside. So imagine what the temperature in the car was. And the batteries just let loose on the car, on the laptop. And this caused our fire. It was very isolated to the passenger side. It just got the plastic going and then smothered itself out. These are the newer style batteries in the laptops. If you haven't seen them, they're called a pouch. It's like a Ziploc bag. It shouldn't be bloated like that. It should be laying flat. But when it gets a little excited and get ready to explode, it puffs up. So let's finish up this thing. What do windshields tell us? Do they help us at all? Has anybody documented the windshields of a vehicle? It's important. I like documenting vehicles. The windshield. I like taking a lot of photographs of the windshield. It gives you good pertinent information. So we're showing you two pictures here. Where should this fire have occurred? Think of yourself damage on that window. It's low, it goes up high across and off to the roof. Would this be an engine compartment fire or an interior fire? Okay, those are the questions you need to think. This is an engine compartment fire. We can see it on the lower picture. It started in the engine, worked up, it attacked the glass low, and then it worked up across the glass, interior, and all across the roof. Again, another engine compartment fire. You can see what's left. We have some glass left on the passenger side, intact all the way to the roof. But on the driver's side, notice there's very little molding left, very little rubber. Across the top, you can see a pattern right above the steering wheel on the roof, almost a V if you flipped it around with a little arrow pointing back.
Carbon fiber.
Yep. So
Carbon fiber hood, you'll see that sometimes now. Everybody, it's even in big trucks that Joey does sometimes. Everybody's looking for lightweight. A smart car gets in a wreck with a shopping cart in a Publix parking lot. It could be a total, not for the shopping cart. So carbon fiber, you see it burns like napalm. Your rule of thumb is kind of, bottom up is engine compartment and top down is interior passenger compartment. And it pretty much kind of holds true. Not something, but you'll see some good progression right here.
So this is again a demo. The window was broken before we got in there. It's getting a little hot in the car, so the camera's moving around a little bit. But you're seeing the fire attack the lower windshield. You're starting to see it darkening down. You're getting the carbon buildup on it, and eventually you'll see it break through. And once it breaks through, think about where that smoke's going. It's going up into the headliner, as you can see there. So we're preheating all that fabric and the headliner. We're getting those gases up high, and it's not going to take much for them to go off once we get ignition up there. But you can start seeing the fire break through right there, and it'll delaminate the glass and start working its way up. Yeah. So again, you start seeing it break through. Remember how glass is made? It's glass sandwiched between plastic. You just saw that little piece come down, and it'll continue. So again, we had to bail out of the vehicle, but there's another one coming behind it. And here's a continuation of it. So you can start seeing the glass like falling down right there. It's molding, but look at the hot smoke go to the top of that. And now we're getting ignition of those superheated gases at the roof level, at the headliner. It doesn't take much now. We've already preheated that area and the fire raced right across. Earlier, I said if you had a center console or something in the center of that seat going from front to back, and we started getting the heat on it, we can get that plastic to start dripping, almost looking like a trailer going across the roof. But you can start seeing that glass is just dripping down, attacking the fire low.
So to a civilian, I mean, they're telling you, when you talk about smoke, to you as a fire investigator, smoke is fuel, right? So the byproducts of combustion, flame, smoke, heat, and gas travel the same as they do in a structure. So we see that little mini flashover cell starting to get itself excited on an interior compartment. The flatter surfaces, the seats where you are going to burn differently. The flat seats are going to burn different than the back of the seat in that vertical position. So lateral flame spread is a little bit slower, but eventually coming through from one compartment to another, you could certainly have that larger compartment with the more robust fuel. Some in big cars, 3-seaters, 3 rows of seating, as much as 600-700 pounds of fuel in that one compartment.
And as you see here, these are interior fires. You can start seeing the big difference. The glass is taken out high. The heat is rising. The flames are rising. It's attacking the fire up higher. It has no need to attack the fire down low at the dashboard. And you can start seeing that in these fires. You'll start seeing the separation in the lower left corner on that gray car. You can start seeing the bubbling. That's a separation of the glass. It's delaminating the glass for you. Okay, more interior fires. You're starting to see the fire attacks high, leaving glass below, and you can see on the white car, there's no damage to the engine
So
compartment at all.
hopefully you understand that it's 2 large sheets of glass that are glued together. We'll show you another example.
So this is a car we did, a test car we did for out in Virginia. And I just want you to see the car is in good condition, except for the front end. All the windows are intact. And you're going to see where we set this fire. We're going to keep jumping ahead a little bit. All we did was take a flare and push it into the dashboard right there. Okay, and we're getting that plastic heated up, and you're going to start seeing, like we showed you earlier in the plastic, it's going to start dripping onto the floor, but it's not going to take long for this fire to get robust, as it's already doing, and getting up into the dashboard. Look at the windshield. Look at the smoke we're generating already, the windshield.
Hardly any wind.
Yep. We're low on wind here, but look at the generation we're doing. Look at this plastic already becoming involved. We've already got some spot fires below. You can see on the carpet. That's got to go up. And again, we're jumping ahead a couple of slides just to make it easier for you. But you can see the flare there. We're not hiding it, but it's up in the dashboard. You can start seeing it dripping down now. But the key here is to start looking at, let's get to the windshield for you so you can see the windshield. We're getting the car nice and heat. We're ventilating it to get our fire progressing where we want it. But there's our robust fire right there on the dashboard. That's where we started this fire. You can see the plastic's already fallen down. We've got fire on the floor, fire going to the front seat, already becoming involved. And now we're going to take you to the windshield to see what the windshield looks like. See the fire still attacking. It's building up. We're getting smoke out the passenger side rear. We'll walk around for you. We've got a good ventilation. We're pulling that fire towards the passenger side rear. Now look at the windshield where the heat is. You're starting to see the heat build up on the laminated glass, and it's starting to separate. Okay, as it starts separating, we get more heat there. You're going to get the fire actually chimneys out. You're going to start seeing the fire ventilating out. And then you're going to get ventilation. So just watch that video for a second. You'll see it progress.
So you see it looking for that vent. It goes immediately to that rear door where it's pouring out there. So well that the flames have enough power to actually detach themselves from one another. They can detach themselves, from the fuel. That's how much energy is in there.
But again, we're talking about the windshield. There's our vent out the windshield. So when you have your fire for your interior fire, you see that damage is high across the windshield. You're going to see it delaminating across the windshield, and that's the effect you're looking for. Right there, you can see it tearing up the whole top of that windshield. If the fire department would extinguish this now, you'd almost have a pattern going right back to the driver's side corner there into it, no matter how much fire we have throughout the whole vehicle. You can see on the back door, the plastic dropping down and causing spot fires on the grass. So let's jump ahead real quick here and let's talk about keys a little bit. What are the keys these days? Very few people have multiple keys. It's key fob or push button. This is the old style key. If you still have them, God bless you. There's not too many of them out there anymore. But the new keys these days are key fobs. These key fobs survive a lot of fire. They have a lot of data inside of them you're going to collect. They'll store data for up to 30 days. Each manufacturer is different on their data they collect in their fobs. The key number, which was once downloaded, can provide it with the last time that the key was used and started the vehicle, basic information about the vehicle, including the complete VIN number. Service history is possible on it. You'll want to locate all these keys. It's important to have all those keys in your possession. It's also important to find out if any keys were ever made. Any duplicates? Did they go to Home Depot? Did they go to the dealership and get a third or fourth key that you don't know about? Downloading some information will give you that. So the keys will survive a fire. These are some keys that I've retrieved. The keys in the ignition, that ignition fails or the key fails, it usually falls down pretty rapidly and debris goes on top of them, or we get them out of the cup holders. But a lot of these keys were found right on the floor or in the ignition for minor fires. You can see a couple there with just separations and only pieces of them. So some of the new information you can get out of a key, seat position. That's really important these days, especially if it's a crime or the insurance side. The gentleman's 6 foot tall. He says he was driving the car when it caught fire at the mall. You go look at the car and the seats, set for a person 4'2", which it happens to be his wife. It'll also tell you radio settings, mirror positions, where the mirror is folded in. Think about your car when you double click the fob, when the mirrors fold in. It'll give you some detailed service information. It could give you last mileage of the car. It could give you vehicle, make, and model, and an image of the car. So that's all important information you can get out of these key fobs now.
Whether you're from private sector or public sector, be very, very concerned with keys. How many keys do you have? Do you know where they're at? Where was one set in the vehicle? Keys are very important. If you have anything to say about public sector reports, if patrolmen are out taking stolen car reports, have a block right on the report, have a check block on your fire arson list. We can supply you with one. We have them that we have. You could take one into the field every time on good hard cardboard stock. But you'll see that we want to know that the resident, the owner, whoever you're interviewing said, we only got one set of keys with the car. That's all the dealer gave us. We bought it used. The owner only had one set of keys. So keys are paramount with their ability to collect data. Data is the world that we live in. So make sure you have a check block there about keys.
So this is a report from a BMW that I was able to download, and you can see the information starting at the top left. That gives you the make, model, year of the car, the engine, the color, the production, the dealer that sold them the car, the mileage, the average mileage, all the way down to when the oil was changed and stuff like that. All good information you get from a key. Fire guys, a lot of times you can take the key to the service center, the dealership, they'll download it to you, not a problem. Law enforcement, again, follow your proper protocols. You may need a warrant, a subpoena. Again, I'm a fire guy, so I don't know too much about that. These are how you clone keys. This is a machine that you can buy on Amazon, and you can clone a key. You can get it, order it with whatever keys you want from whatever dealership, manufacturer. You put one key in, you put the good key in, you push a button, and you've just cloned that key. So you have a complete copy. So we'll finish up the day talking about some ECMs and some other control modules. A lot of these modules will hold data for up to 60 days. A lot of them will survive moderate to severe fires. Complete burnouts, not so much anymore. The materials they're making these with isn't survivable that much on a complete burnout that's had a long-term or lack of suppression. But the modules, the ECUs, will hold a lot of that data that you can get. They're control modules. They embed systems and electronics that control more than one system. The powertrain control modules, transmissions, and power lines. The brake control module for the ABS. Body control modules. These go on and on and on, depending on the manufacturers, depending on how many could be in the vehicle. There could be as many as 80 different modules within the current model of vehicles. That's a lot of vehicle modules that you have to go through. And the technology to get that information is expensive. Here's some of your body modules within the vehicle: anti-lock brakes, your engine control, anti-lock brakes, stability, transmission, keyless entry, tire pressure, vehicle-to-vehicle communications. These are just the basics that are in a vehicle. Some of them talk to each other real good. Some don't like talking to each other. So you have to pull out the airbag module versus the drivetrain module to get the data you want. The airbag control module, this is going to be an event driven. So you have to have some kind of event that activates it. The control module will help determining the vehicle's last known GPS coordinates. It will provide pre-crash data. And it will hold the data for up to 60 days on most vehicles. These will survive a lot of times on moderate fires. Severe complete burnouts, again, it's going to be tough depending on where it's located. This is the BMW one. It was located under the seats. It survived. If you're going to remove them carefully. Document the hell out of them. Someone's going to ask you how you got that information. And there was just an opinion out of the 4th Circuit out of Florida that says that's all protected information now. So check with your law enforcement or your legal side. This is the data you'll get out of the airbag module. 5 seconds before to 0.5 seconds. It'll tell you how fast they were going, RPMs, engine control module. Yeah, this is what they just got out of Tiger Woods yesterday. This is how they got it. He was doing 84 to 87 miles an hour. I wish I could get away without getting a ticket for that speed, but it doesn't happen. But this is the information you can get. Vehicle position history. Again, this another module. It'll give you data. Top data is 9/29 at the time. Location, he was in Memphis, longitude and latitude. And then it goes down to 9/28 at 1750. He shows he was in Summit, Kentucky, longitude and latitudes.
So if you're a follower of this site, you had one of the best time analysis guys, timeline guys, Trevor Maynard, teaching for DCARI, so which is a credit to them. But time is the THE most important ingredient in any investigation, regardless of what you're doing. So this is ways in bigger cases where you can start locking people into time. Don't give up. So if you think you can get to something, you've got the car impounded, you need maybe an additional search warrant, just be careful. Early on, time is your enemy. When you start to create time and drive it to your side of the equation, you're on your way to a winner. So that's important data. We're going to have to do the advanced origin and cause and timeline of car fires in the upcoming September chase of the DCARI site.
So this is this is a black box. This is when it all became really prevalent, that they were out there since 2012 when the Lieutenant Governor of Connecticut was driving his Crown Vic. He claimed he was driving the speed limit wearing a seatbelt. Investigators pulled the black box data, showed he was doing 100 miles an hour without a seatbelt at the time of the crash. And I'm sure everybody wants to see what the vehicle looks like. So there it is. That's where it came out, the first black boxes. They are in all vehicles at this point. Getting the information, again, I just said there was a federal court out of Florida that just put an opinion out that data is protected. So you need to read that. But if you're going to try to pull that stuff, please go through your law enforcement, pull it with a warrant, or talk with the insurance company on the private side. We may be able to get it. We're still waiting for legal opinion after the circuit court opinion, if it's still protected, even if the insurance company takes possession of the vehicle. I'm sure Tiger Woods will tell us on that one. You'll start seeing them under the carpets. They're usually protected. Body modules, airbag modules, they usually try to protect them from any kind of collision or destruction. Under the center console, again, protected. Older style data recorders are out there. Again, here's the case I was just talking about, the Fourth Amendment ruling. If you take a picture of that QR code, it'll download the case out of Florida and you can get the complete legal opinion on what's going on. But here's some newer data recorders. You can see the upper right, left one is actually put down on little rubber bushings to protect it. So we hope you enjoyed the presentation. We've given you a lot of information in a little time. Unfortunately, we can't spend 3 days with you on this, just doing video. We would love to. But if you're looking for other information, the QR code on the top right will take you to the New Jersey chapter website. And that has a ton of information and a ton of downloads that are free. Please take them all you want. You can contact me or Barry through that website. Our names are on there with our emails. Feel free to reach out if you can. We thank you for your time and hope you enjoyed it.
Guys, that was amazing. Thank you so much. Like you said, there's just so much information out there. We really appreciate it. What we are going to do is we'll ask you to provide us with some questions. We'll make this tested material, and people can get some tested hours for taking the training. And at some time in the future, we'll bring you guys back for a live Q&A. So check out our website, and all the information will be there. So, gentlemen, we really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it, and I'll forward those questions.
Thanks, Bill.